So consider that our self-centered thought says, it whispers in our ear, I am your friend, do what I say. And we salute our own self-centered thought and follow its instructions. And that definitely feeds into our anger. And from our anger comes unhappiness, both in this life and in future lives. So is that self-centered thought that just looks out for I and mine, is it really our friend? Or is it actually, in fact, a very deceptive and cunning force in our lives that makes us self-sabotage and ruins the chance for not only happiness of this life, but also the happiness of spiritual realizations and awakening. So instead of saluting our self-centered thought and following it, let's realize that it's not a part of us. It's not who we are. It's not part of our nature. And it can be eliminated. So it may take a while and it'll take some effort, but let's make that determination to eliminate the self-centeredness so we can be free and bring the freedom of the Dharma to all other living beings. And for that reason, we're listening to teachings this afternoon. The last session we started talking about how our anger actually, when we act out of anger, we actually bring about the opposite of what we really want. Yeah, that often when we're angry with somebody that we're very close to, what we really want is to be able to give love and receive love. When we're angry with somebody that we work with, often what we want is good communication. When we're angry with our neighbor or somebody nearby, it's often because we want friendship, but we're angry because that person isn't doing what we want or saying what we want or paying enough attention to us or whatever it is. Okay? Can you see this in your lives? Yeah. I had an incident with one friend. He was using the car of another friend who was in India. And it was a great car, except from time to time the hood would fly up. Yeah, just a little problem. So the hood was chained down so it wouldn't fly up. So one time my friend was driving up from Cloud Mountain Retreat Center up to Seattle and was supposed to be there at a certain time, and he didn't show up. And this were the days, remember the days without phones, cell phones. Yeah, unimaginable, but there really were days like that. And so, couldn't call. Of course, he could have called at one of those roadside phones. He could have walked somewhere and called. But he didn't. And I'm waiting, and he's not showing up. And I'm getting worried, like what happened to him? Was there an accident or. And so finally he comes, and I said, what happened? And he said, the hood of the car flew up on I-5, and the hood flew up, and I flew out. I was furious because I had been telling him the whole time to go get it fixed, and he didn't listen to me. And there, he almost got killed. Can you imagine in the middle of I-5? Yeah, you're going 65 miles an hour with traffic all around you, and the hood of your car flies up. Yeah. So I got so mad. And in looking at it afterwards, what I really wanted to say was, I'm so glad you're safe. But what was I saying? You idiot, I told you to get it fixed. But what I really wanted was to convey, that I'm really glad he was safe. So it's a very good example of how, we want to say one thing, but actually what we say and do brings about the opposite result. Yeah. I want good communication with that person, but I'm so intimidated by them because I'm so angry because they don't say hello and they're so unfriendly that I don't want to talk to them. And then I get angrier and angrier and angrier because they don't pay any attention to me. And I'm not going to break the ice and go talk to them if they don't talk to me. And yet, what we're really wanting is good communication. Yeah. So in so many instances like this, what we have to do is see what is it we're really wanting, or to put it in NVC, nonviolent communication language, what are we needing? Yeah. And to see what that is, and then to see how our anger is preventing us from getting that, having that. And so, working with our mind to subdue that anger, yeah, and to subdue all the, everything anger's justifying, okay? So I want good communication, but I use my anger to justify not talking to the other person. Yeah, real smart, isn't it? Yeah, that's real good human intelligence. I want good communication, but I refuse to talk to that person because they're so unfriendly. Yeah? Or, I want to have a good relationship with my employer or, whoever it is. But I'm so, intimidated by them because they're a big authority figure that I just kind of, avoid them. And then, and then of course I'm overlooked for promotion and I don't feel welcome in the office and everything. But who's causing all of that? Yeah, it's me. So, this is one thing that we're trying to do in Dharma practice is really tear apart or tease apart. Yeah, these different strands to see what's really going on, and then often we discovered we need to nudge ourselves and to get ourselves to do something that we've been using our anger to justify not doing. Yeah. Okay, so this involves, because our anger is quite tied up with the self-centeredness. So we really have to overcome that. Yeah. And then it gets all tangled up with, but my anger protects me and I don't feel safe about that person because they have more power than I do and they're an authority figure and they're the boss and they're, my parents or they're whoever it is, There's my neighbor who's a foot taller than me, whatever it is. So I feel intimidated. And then we use that to justify, our just sitting there stewing in our anger, feeling sorry for ourselves. Yeah. And there we are, So sometimes we really have to kind of kick ourselves in the pants, figuratively, to get ourselves to try something new instead of just falling back on old patterns, habitual patterns. Okay? Makes some sense? But it's so scary to try doing things differently. There's something so familiar in all my old bad habits. Yeah? If I try and change my bad habits, oh my goodness, what's going to happen to me? Yeah? I feel so vulnerable. People may take advantage of me. I'll disappear. Yeah. I don't think we're going to disappear. We have too much grasping at the self to disappear. Yeah? Don't worry about that. Your self-grasping is stable. You're not going to lose your sense of self. Yeah. If only it were that easy to realize emptiness. Okay. So it's very interesting when you look in the Visuddhimagga. This is a Pali text by Buddhaghosa. When he's talking about the four immeasurables, the first one is love. And so he talks very directly there about to have love, we have to first do something with anger and resentment and hatred and so on. And then he lists all these different antidotes to them. And many of the antidotes he suggests are the same ones that Shantideva suggests in chapter 6 of Engaging in the Bodhisattva's Deeds. Yeah. So I think those two sages, one from the Pali tradition, one from the Sanskrit tradition, were definitely on the same wavelength. Yeah. And I wonder if one copied from the other. Or maybe they both copied from the Buddha. I mean, Shantideva was okay. He said, what I'm teaching is nothing new. It's not my ideas. It's coming from the Buddha. Yeah. Okay. So there's many different techniques for working with anger. And, you can read them. And the whole trick with it is to practice them when you're not angry. Yeah. Okay, so there are times when you're not angry when you can practice them. You're not angry all the time. Okay, but we need to get that familiarity with a new way of looking at things so that when the anger arises, there's some familiarity. Okay, yeah. So it's like, you have to go for your driving license. You don't go without practicing driving. Yeah. So in the same way, if we just go along in our life, and of course we're going to meet disagreeable people and situations. If we don't practice, then what do we expect? Yeah. So in the same way that you practice very hard for your driving test, and you even learn to parallel park. Remember that? Remember the days without power steering, and you're learning to cell phones. It was before that, even before that, and no power steering. Yeah, but you practiced. And then, we were able to get our license. So in the same way with everything, we need to practice. It's like learning to type. Do you remember your high school typing class? Yeah, right. We start. Before we grow, we like this. And then the first thing the teacher says in the typing class is, you don't look at your fingers. Don't look at your fingers. Don't look at your fingers. Yeah. But eventually we practice and we learn how to type, kind of, to greater or lesser degrees, but we do learn. Okay, so that's that whole thing. And Shantideva himself said, there's nothing that doesn't get easier with practice. Okay, so there's you can see which of the antidotes to anger helps you the most. There's a few that I really like. One is recognizing that the other person is suffering, and that even if it seems they are actively wishing to harm me, they aren't really, because whatever they're doing, it's motivated by an attempt to be happy and to get rid of their pain, and they mistakenly think that doing what they're doing to me is going to alleviate their own pain. So it won't, but it helps me see, okay, that this is not some kind of evil barbarian trying to get me. It's somebody who's confused, and confused people are objects of compassion. Yeah. So I find that one helpful. Another one I find helpful is realizing that whatever this person is doing to me that I am getting upset with, I have done to others. Similar kinds of thing. Yeah, so I've created the cause through my own self-centeredness, and now I'm experiencing the result of the causes that I created. So there's no sense getting mad at the other person, because actually they're not the cause of my suffering. My own self-centeredness is. The other person just happens to be the tool or the agent. Yeah. But my pain is due to my own bad actions. Yeah. So then can't blame the other person. Have to accept responsibility. And I find for myself, as soon as I accept responsibility for my own bad actions that are bringing my present suffering, then my mind relaxes, because I see there's something I can do about it. I can change how I behave. I can change how I think. And so I better get busy doing that. So those are a couple of the ones that I like. There may be other ones that you really like. So there's many, many, antidotes. So you can read them. I already told you the names of the books, remember? And, and try them out and see what works for you in different situations. Yeah.
Can I also just put in a plug for the amazing teachings you gave in Mexico on anger? Those have helped me so much, and I recommend everyone listen to those.
Yeah, that was a few years ago. And, They're in Spanish and English. And what I did, I was teaching in many different Mexican centers. And so I took the whole of chapter 6 and I taught part in one center, part in the next, part in the next, and they all streamed so that everybody else could watch it. Yeah, and went through the whole chapter. Yeah. And in that chapter, if you suffer from jealousy, there's some beautiful verses on how to subdue jealousy. Ones that just completely, like, take the wind out of your jealousy. You just can't hold up. It just can't hold up because Shantideva is so clear about, the stupid way we think sometimes. Yeah. Like there was one verse where he was saying, if you're jealous of somebody because somebody else gave them a present instead of giving you the present, yeah, then he was saying, and you get so jealous that you don't want the other person to have that present. And Shantideva says, whether he has the present or doesn't have the present, either way, you're not going to have it. So why are you so upset? And he's completely right. Yeah, either way, I don't have it. So why am I so jealous? It's ridiculous. Okay, so there's many verses. I mean, this is the beauty of Shantideva, is in a few words, he just like goes, bing, right to the core of all our rationalizations and justifications and so on. And I really like that approach. Yeah, because the soft, gentle, oh, I know you're suffering, you're angry, poor you, I know those people are sometimes rude, but you just have to endure it. It's okay, don't get too knocked out about it, don't worry, they won't do it anymore. That approach does not work with my anger. Okay? My anger needs to get clobbered over the head so that the whole fallacy in its quote logic gets smashed, And that way I get it. It's like, oh yeah, that way of thinking is really dumb. Even though I've been thinking like that my whole lifetime and probably previous lives. And even though society has taught me to think like that, and society thinks that's a good way to think, yeah, that even all that's going on, that doesn't make what I'm thinking beneficial or realistic. Yeah. So you have to be willing to challenge a lot of those things. Let me give you another example of how what society teaches us and what Dharma says don't meet. Okay, so I don't know in your family, but in my family, I was taught when you want something, don't ask somebody directly for it, because that's rude. Saying, oh, what you have is really nice, can I have it? Or, I want this, I want that, can you get it for me? I was taught, outside of, don't say anything like that to anybody who's not my parents, and actually don't even say it to my parents either. Okay? But so I was taught the polite thing to do was to hint. Yeah, because if you hint, if you ask somebody directly, it puts them in an awkward position. Then they have to say no. If you hint, then, they can just kind of pretend like they don't get it. And so that doesn't put them in an awkward position. Yeah, so that's what I was taught was polite. To just hint, not too overtly hint, You have to hint in a subtle way, yeah, so that they get it that you want something, but they don't think, oh, she's hinting. Okay? Yeah. So I was taught that's the polite way to do it. And then I come into Buddhism, and they talk about the 5 wrong livelihoods, at least for monastics, and one of them is hinting. That we're not supposed to hint when we need something or want something. Yeah? Because that somehow, it's kind of deceptive. It's going, oh, but I accomplished the perfection of hinting. Yeah. And, and now, oh, maybe that's not such a good way to relate to people. I have to give that up. Okay. So there's many things like that we may have learned, or that society teaches us. Society teaches us, somebody insults you, you insult them back. Yeah. And our president teaches us, even they don't insult you, you still insult them. Yeah. Because the more people you can insult and the more confusion you can create around you, the more it keeps everybody else busy, so that you can do what you want to do. And it takes the attention off yourself. Yeah? And that's what he's teaching children by example. Yeah? And what are we learning with the school shootings? There was another one, actually, in Indiana this time. So 2 within 1 week. Yeah. This one, a teacher was hurt and a student, and it was in a middle school. Yeah. And so one boy asked to be excused from class for a minute. He went outside. He came back with 2 revolvers. He started shooting, and the teacher jumped on top of him and brought him to the ground. And so the teacher got shot 3 or 4 times. And one girl got shot too. But they calmed him down, and then the police came. Yeah, that was a few days after the Texas shooting. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm sure our Congress people are having a wonderful Memorial Day holiday. Yeah. So, where was I? I got distracted there.
What is that teaching?
Yeah, so what is that teaching us? What is it teaching young kids? Yeah, you want some attention, go get a gun and bring it into your school and start shooting. You'll get lots of attention that way. Yeah, or you have a peeve with one of your classmates, or a teacher, whatever, is bring a gun to school and do something.
But also Trump is teaching us like they're animals. So you're just shooting animals.
Yeah.
That's sad.
Yeah. What? Yeah. Okay. So, there's different people with different political opinions. But, what I'm talking about is ethical conduct, not politics. Okay? I want to talk about ethical conduct because I feel in our country, we've kind of lost our ethical conduct. Yeah. And it needs to be brought back. And if we're waiting for our leaders to set examples of good ethical conduct, don't wait. We have to be the examples of good ethical conduct ourselves. Yeah. So in terms of how we speak about other people or how we speak to people, Yeah. We have to do it according to our own values and show other people the respect that we think people should show each other in society. Yeah. Okay. So my point is, don't just follow what other people are saying or doing, and don't just follow what society approves of. Because lots of times what society approves of is quite unethical. Okay? Okay, so here we are, extending this insight to others. So now that you have identified the mechanics of misery in your own situation, okay, so this is after the six bucket meditations. Yeah, so it's not your bucket list. Okay, it's not that bucket meditation. Okay, now that you have identified the mechanics of misery in your own situation, you can extend this insight to other sentient beings suffering the same miseries. However, for your response to be love and compassion, it is not sufficient. I read this before, but it's important. It is not sufficient just to know how other beings suffer. You must also have a sense of closeness with them. Otherwise, the more you know about your enemy's suffering, the happier you might be. As Tsongkhapa says, in the world, when suffering is seen in an enemy, not only is it not unbearable, but you delight in it. You know? Yippee! All those people in Syria got killed. Yeah? We delight. We, even in politics, we form an enemy and we delight when those people suffer. On a personal level, we have an enemy. We delight when those people suffer. We say things like, now they got a taste of their own medicine. Don't we? Yeah. I hope they learned something like that. This boom, 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 you know? Okay. When persons who have neither helped nor harmed you are seen to suffer, you will, in most cases, pay no attention to their situation. Yeah? People who you don't know, or in other countries, or whatever, we don't pay a lot of attention to their situation. We might have a little bit, well, that's too bad, but, you know, we can live with it. This reaction is caused by not having a sense of closeness with respect to those persons. But when you see friends suffer, it is unbearable. Unbearable in the sense that you want to do something about it. And the degree of unbearability is just as great as your sense of closeness to them. Therefore, it is essential that you generate a sense of strong cherishing and affection for sentient beings. Okay? So to cultivate love and compassion, we have to have this sense of closeness and cherishing for others. Yeah? We can't just give them a label, I don't care what label you give them, and think that that's what they are and sign off on them. Yeah. Because if we do that, then that's how we justify to ourselves harming them. And that's one technique that militaries and armies have used since way back when, is you call the enemy that you're fighting a name and you make them seem less than human. And then that gives the soldiers who would ordinarily be adverse to taking human life, it gives them the mental space where they feel it's okay to take that life because that person is whatever the name that you happen to be calling them. and they're less than. Okay? So this is something that we definitely need to overcome, and to really see that all those people are living beings just like us who want happiness and don't want to suffer. And moreover, we have been very close to them in the past, such that if we really recall how close we've been, then we would find it just as unbearable to see strangers and enemies suffer as we would to see the people we're close to in this life suffer. Okay? So, one of the ways we do that, there's a few different ways. One of the ways that we do that is by seeing that in previous lives, all other sentient beings at one time or another have been our parents and have brought us up with care and concern and, protected us and so on. Okay? And so at first it sounds weird to think that, we've all been each other's parents. And sometimes if you have had problems with your parents, then you don't want to even think of other people as being your parents, because it doesn't bring you that warm and close feeling. Okay? But I think it's very important, even in this life, if we have problems in our family and with our parents, that we resolve them. And in particular, to see that our parents are human beings. They are not perfect. Yeah, and we shouldn't expect them to be perfect. When we're children, you always see your parents as perfect. And then one of the things that happen is, as you get older, is you begin to hopefully realize they're human beings just like you. Yeah, because we always give ourselves leave to be imperfect. But somehow, especially with parents, we want them to be everything we want them to be, which is really rather unfair. Yeah, because they had their own upbringing, they endured whatever they endured in their own families, and they're doing the best they can to bring us up. And I think bringing up children is one of the most difficult things you can do. And yet, you don't have to take classes for it. You don't need a license. Yeah, everything else you need to pass an exam and get a license to do, it seems like. But having kids, which really is difficult, doesn't require anything, So, to really see, wow, our parents were doing the best they could given their own situation. And their own situation wasn't always the best one. Yeah. So it can be very helpful to think about what was going on in the country when your parents were growing up. Yeah. And what was going on, what they saw as an example when they were growing up, and to hear stories of their parents and their family and their experiences. Maybe they were bullied at school. Maybe they experienced discrimination or prejudice. Maybe they had to go off to war. So, to really understand where our parents are coming from can be very, very helpful. Okay? And then see that in spite of all of that, they gave us this body and they brought us up. And they kept us from killing ourselves when we were toddlers. Because when we were toddlers, we got into all sorts of mischief. And probably could have died very easily if they hadn't stepped in and saved us. Yeah? And so to really see the kindness of our parents. Okay, they weren't perfect. Okay, they did some things we didn't like. Okay, we may have certain emotional hang-ups because of what they did. We're adults now. We can deal with our emotional things. We can, we're not 7-year-olds or 6-year-olds anymore. So when we were kids, we may have understood what our parents did in a certain negative light, but now as adults, we can look at those same situations and see them in a very different light, and let go of some of the stuff we've been carrying around with us for many, many, many years. Old, painful stuff. Yeah. And just, we're adults now. We can look, gee, what I learned, what I heard, that doesn't make much sense. I'm going to let that go. I don't believe that now. Like when your parents in a fit of anger say, you're never going to amount to anything. Yeah, we probably all heard that in one form or another. Yeah, did our parents really mean it? I don't think so. Yeah, but people say that in a fit of anger. Yet you're 4 years old, then you think, oh, that must be true. And you believe it. But now we're not 4 years old anymore. We don't have to believe that stuff. Okay? So to really do some work to let go of those things, and so that we can actually see the kindness of our parents. And I think that's very important, and I think it's important spiritually, and it's important emotionally. Yeah? Because if we can't see our parents as kind, then what are you going to teach your children? Yeah? If you complain about your parents in front of your children, you're teaching your children to complain about you when you're not there. Okay? So I think very important to clarify this kind of stuff in our mind. Okay, so one of the techniques for seeing, beings as close is to see that they've all been our parents in one way or another. And it can, we think of the kindness of our parents, and then we see other, imagine other people have been in that role and been kind to us. If you can't do it with your parents, think of whoever it was who brought you up, who took care of you, and who was kind. And think of the kindness of that person, and then think that everybody else has also been kind to you at that time in your life where there was no way you could take care of yourself. Yeah. When we were infants, we may feel like I'm a strong, independent person right now. But hey, for the first few years of our life, we couldn't do anything for ourselves. We were completely dependent on others. We couldn't even roll over, let alone feed ourselves or put a blanket on when we were cold or get some water when we were thirsty. Everything was given up to us totally by the effort of other living beings. Yeah. And that kindness is really rather remarkable when you think about it. And it's also can be helpful to watch animals and how animals are with their young. Yeah. Watch how a mama dog takes care of her puppies, or how a mama cat takes care of her kittens. Yeah. Or when you have mice, you find mice in your house, instead of going, watch for a minute before you take them outside, how the mama mouse takes care of the baby mice. Yeah. it's really something. I remember being at Cloud Mountain, this retreat center, and they had peacocks. Yeah, our neighbors have peacocks. If you hear that kind of weird calling, it's the peacocks. So, you watch, and the mama peacock, she just sits on those eggs all day, all night until they hatch. And then, she teaches the baby peacocks where, how to eat and where to go and what to do and who you can trust and who you can't trust. And then in the evening, she, all these little baby chicks are like all over the place. She gets them all back together and she sits on top of them again to keep them warm. She doesn't have a blanket. So, she can't get up in the middle of the night if she wants to because she's got to protect her little chicks. Yeah. And so it's very heartwarming to look at this. At Kopan, when I first went there, the monastery in Nepal, there was a dog, Sasha, who I will never forget. And I'm not very good with names, but I remember Sasha's name. And I remember Sasha. Sasha, I don't know what happened, but her back legs were crippled, so she couldn't stand up. Somehow she got pregnant. She had a litter of puppies. Yeah. And Sasha also had a cut in her head with maggots. Sasha was not in good shape. But the love she gave to those pups, dragging herself around, trying to get food so that she could nurse those pups, it was just amazing to see. And then you think, wow, other living beings have been kind to me, and in the same way Sasha is kind to her pups. That's really kind of mind-blowing. And so that's easy to feel towards the people you like, a little bit harder to feel towards the people you don't know. And for the people you can't stand, you still have to think like that. That in previous lives, we haven't always been in the same relationship that we are in right now. In a previous life, that person took care of me in the same kind way as all these mothers that I see now are taking care of their kids. Yeah? And so when you think that way, this feeling of closeness comes with other living beings. Because we realize, hey, they're not strangers. They're not enemies. Yeah, we're not alienated from them. Yeah, they're living beings who have kept us alive through their own compassion and kindness. Yeah, and they could have just left us there to die. Yeah, but they didn't. And so, to really have that sense of closeness for them. Very important. So that's one way of feeling close to other sentient beings. Another way is to think about how interdependent we are now, or how dependent we are now on other living beings. Yeah, none of us grew the food that we ate today at lunch, did we? Anybody here grow the food we ate at lunch? None of us cooked the food, or bought it, or harvested, or transported it. Yeah. But here was all this food that was kind of miraculously appearing on the table. We didn't even have to grow it and harvest it and transport it and cook it. Yeah, some of you very kindly offered it to the group. Yeah, and so that's why we dedicate for the well-being of all the benefactors who offer the food. But when we really look at it, our food came basically due to the efforts of others. Our clothing, any of you wear the fabric that your clothes are made from? Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, any of us build the building that we're sitting in? A few of us watched it being built and made sure it got built correctly. Yeah. It used to be a garage, so the ceiling was not up there. It was right over these beams. And so they took off the roof, and they were supposed to put a glue lumbing above this one. And Venerable Semke came out as they were putting on the roof without the glue lumbing. Glue lambing. Yeah, glue lambing. Beam. And she said, "Hey, isn't there supposed to be a glue lambing there?" And the guy said, "Oh, maybe, let me check." So thank goodness she noticed, so that the building is built properly. It's not going to fall down on top of us, hopefully, at least not today. Okay? But none of us, built it. Yeah. And we look at, the car that you drove to get here, or whatever transportation you took to get here. Did you make that vehicle? No. Okay. When we look around, everything we use came due to the efforts of others. Every single thing. You're so attached to your phone. Did you make your phone? No. Did you make your what do you call them? Not headphones. Yeah. Or your tablet, or your computer. Yeah. We didn't make any of those. Yeah. So everything that we use and have really depends completely on other living beings. And we contribute our own little bit through what we do, but we're so dependent on others' efforts and kindness. And so again, when we really think of that, it's kind of overwhelming to see what other living beings go through that we benefit from. And it doesn't matter that they're not thinking specifically of us when they do that. Yeah, the people who are working on the roads at 2:00 in the morning, they don't think, "Oh, I'm doing this specifically for, these people at Sravasti Abbey's Memorial Day retreat." Yeah. They don't have to be thinking that they're doing it for us specifically, for it's still to be kindness for us. Because the bottom line is, if they didn't do it, we would not have a road to go on. Okay? So to really see that all how dependent we are on other living beings, and that brings a sense of closeness to them. Yeah? A sense of being the recipient of a tremendous amount of kindness. Yeah? And so our natural feeling is, when we receive kindness, we want to repay it. Either we want to repay it to the people who are kind to us, or we want to pay it forward to other people. Okay? And so that those meditation steps are really important for opening our heart and bringing about this sense of closeness. And then, based on that sense of closeness, then having love, which is the wish for someone to have happiness and the causes of happiness, makes sense. And then compassion, which is the wish for them to be free of dukkha and all misery and its causes, then that also makes sense. And that comes very, very naturally when we have this sense of closeness. Okay? So we have to really, in our meditation, do make a lot of effort to develop that sense of closeness, because normally our self-centered thought just is oblivious to it. Yeah. Oblivious to the kindness of others. In fact, sometimes we expect their kindness and we even demand it. Yeah. Let alone, appreciate what they've done. Okay. True love and compassion rise on the basis of respecting others. That's important. Yeah, we have to respect others to really wish them well. Yeah. And we respect them because they're living beings. That's all. Yeah. This feeling of empathy is achieved by recognizing that you and all others, whether friends, enemies, or neutral parties, share a central aspiration by wanting happiness and not wanting suffering, even if you view happiness and suffering differently. Also, it helps to be aware that over the course of countless lifetimes, everyone at some time has been your mother and your closest friend. With this prerequisite sense of closeness and intimacy with everyone in place, insight into how sentient beings wander powerlessly in cyclic existence serves to heighten love and compassion. Okay, because when we have this sense of closeness, then when we see those beings that we feel close to suffer, then automatically the love and compassion arise. Okay. In the presence of intimacy and insight, the factors of love, compassion, and a desire to help others arise without difficulty. So this evening, do the meditations on reflecting on the kindness of others, both as your parents and as people in society doing their jobs, and cultivate that sense of appreciation and gratitude for them.
Were you able to do these meditation at the beginning of your practice? When you were new to
Me?
Yeah. Did it take a long time or just?
Well, I always did them. It's not a question of being able to do them or not. My teachers taught them to us, and so we did them. And of course, the more you do something, the more sense it makes. At first it may be like, well, all these people have been my parents, and I'm not quite sure about rebirth. But then the more you think about the reasons for rebirth, the more that seems to make sense. Then other living beings being our parents makes sense. And this meditation actually helped me to work out a lot of my family issues. Yeah. In fact, it forced me to work out my family issues. And so it was very, very helpful. And of course, that took time. You don't just do a meditation once and then, okay, got that down, let's go on to the next one. All these are things that you train your mind in by doing them again and again and again. Yeah, not just over weeks and months, but over years and lifetimes. Yeah, but as with anything, the more we familiarize ourselves, the more it really gels in our heart and makes sense to us.
Just remembering in relation to your question that when I first started doing these any of the Lamrim meditations, what I found most helpful when they were newer to me was when I didn't come up with the conclusion that the Lamrim meditation had. I learned the most sometimes then, because then I'd look and like, why is it my mind can't go there? Why is it that I can't, make this happen? And that actually was where I learned a lot at first. Like, what's in the way of me being able to come to this conclusion for any reason, just like an open book, like where. So that was helpful.
Yeah.
To know that this is what I'm trying to do, but hey, I'm not there. Why? You just look at that.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you see all these preconceptions and all of our own rules of the universe, how things should be. Then you see, oh, those things are getting in my way.
I remember now the first question I ever asked you.
Uh-huh. What was it?
It took me a couple of years.
Oh.
My heart was beating because I was so nervous. We were at a retreat at Cloud Mountain or someplace, I don't know where, and I was kind of getting a sense of the depth of what Buddhism was going to do, like changing you from the inside out completely. And I said, "This is going to brainwash me."
Yeah.
And I was like really fearful, and you said, "Yes, it's going to wash your brain in loving kindness and compassion."
Yeah.
I remember the first question I asked.
Yeah. What was it? There's.
You really mind? I remember the first question I asked you too.
Uh-huh.
I was late for a retreat, and everybody was eating dinner. And I walked up, and you walked down with a plate of food for me. Because I was late, I wasn't going to get any food. And I asked you, "Are you the teacher?" And you laughed and said, "Yes, I am."
I have a bit of a heavy question, actually. So I have a lot of family in the Middle East, and so we often have heated political conversations that are actually quite personal. And I find myself recently I found myself having conversations with family members, trying to get them to step away from the rhetoric a little bit and actually have a little bit more compassion, recognizing that there's it's very complicated. But I guess I'm curious to know, how would you suggest helping other people maybe try to step outside of the kind of the just the things that we tell ourselves, because it makes us feel, they've either been fed to us, or we feel like we have to really be entrenched in our beliefs, and in doing so dehumanize other people.
Okay, so are you talking of a situation in which you and your family disagree on political issues, or are you talking about a situation where people in your family are stuck in really bad habits like substance abuse or something like that?
No, I guess you could think about it in terms of political beliefs, but it's not really. It goes beyond that, because it's, so I'm actually Jewish. I'm not a Buddhist, right? And so, when we're talking about conflict, right? It's deeper. It's not just about political, what's happening here, what's happening there, but it goes deeper, and there's baggage, and there's lots of stuff associated with it. And I think it's hard to unpack, because people are so entrenched in just fighting for what it is that how they feel.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm from a Jewish background. I understand. Yeah. Yeah.
And so the point I try to make is that to some of my family members, not that you're entitled to your opinion, of course, and you're looking at it from your own perspective, but just trying to get them to sometimes step back and understand, but these are people too, right? And so there's this struggle, and so even just can we just try to understand that? And it's really hard, I think.
It's very hard.
So I guess I'm wondering, can you speak to that in terms of maybe helping? Because I don't feel like I get anywhere.
Well, I gave up. You know, with my dad especially, certain things he'd say, just the way he said it, it just like, you know, and I would try and explain a different viewpoint and let's open this up and things like that. And he just couldn't go there. He just couldn't go there. So, so I just accepted it. Yeah. With younger members of the family, although sometimes younger members of the family can be just as fanatical, sometimes more fanatical. Yeah. But sometimes they can be more open. You can have more of a discussion. But you have to see, you know, kind of person by person who is receptive to have a discussion and who is just entrenched in their views such that, you know, it's better just leave a sleeping dog lie. You know, it's hard. It's hard, you know, and it would, I know, sometimes make my skin crawl to hear certain things being said. But I just resorted to, you know, in a social situation with the family, just changing the topic. Yeah, I would just change the topic and that's it. Individual discussions didn't seem to do much. Sorry. But what I did happen is okay. What I did appreciate is okay. You know, like my dad especially. You know, he came from a certain background. He faced anti-Semitism. There was, you know, so I understood where he was coming from. What I did learn to appreciate is that back in the days when I was in college and the Vietnam War was going on, my parents were against the war. Now, and so many families in those days, it was just, I mean, the kids and the parents just didn't speak to each other. There was, you know, family dinners were like blow-up discussions about the Vietnam War. So I felt fortunate in that way that was one area where they were more open-minded. Can't have everything. Yeah. Okay, so let's dedicate now. So let's dedicate for all those people who are closed-minded, unlike us who are extraordinarily open-minded and tolerant and will listen to anything. Okay?